أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا المرسلين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So I know it's been a couple of weeks since we did the last Halaqa before Umrah, and it seems like a lot longer than that for some reason. It's like home away from home, subhanAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get everyone the ability to go there, and inshallah may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make and rectify everyone's situation, make it easy for everyone, especially our dear brother Tawheed who's passed away early after Fajr this morning. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us husn al-khatimah. So last week we started, or a couple of weeks ago, we started Hadith number 34. As the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, عن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. رواه Muslim. On the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri رضي الله عنه, I heard the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم say, whoever or whosoever of you sees an evil, let him or her change it with their hand, and if he or she is not able to do so, then let him change it with their tongue, and if he or she are not able to do so, then let them change it with their heart. And this is the weakest of faith reported by Muslim. So we talked about Abu Sa'id al-Khudri a little while ago, and one day inshallah we'll go more into the lives of the companions and those who narrated the hadith. It was said that during one of the times of the Khulafa by the name of Marwan, he realized on Salat al-Eid a lot of people were leaving after the Salah, or not staying for the khutbah. So then he wanted to change it up so people can stay for the khutbah. He wanted to do the Salah after the khutbah. So one of the people stood up and said the Salatu qabla al-khutbah, the Salah before the khutbah. And then Abu Sa'id al-Khudri was also there, and he mentioned this hadith. All right, and some say, Imam Nawawi says that, some people ask how come he didn't correct him before this person corrected him. Some say he arrived after the person was correcting the Khalifa. The other opinion was saying that it was two separate situations, and others say that he was afraid, as a senior companion, if he had said something, it would have caused a fitna. But here we see the Khalifa himself being corrected, and it was something that was not uncommon, and you will see throughout history. And we'll touch upon that later. Now last week, we talked about the concept of the mindset of removal of evil, alright? So whether it's the hand, the tongue, or the heart, the idea is that we dislike evil, and anything that angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we abstain from it. And we talked about the story of Ibn Taymiyyah, who was walking with a group of his students, and this is hundreds of years ago, and at that time Islam was the government, and the system, like the Islamic State was still there. So they saw some people drinking alcohol, and they wanted to, the students of knowledge wanted to stop this munkar or this evil from happening. Ibn Taymiyyah said, leave them. And he said, instead, when they're not drinking, they're killing and raping Muslim women and children. So here we see, and we learn that, the changing of evil is not to be done haphazardly or by anyone, but rather, and we spoke before about changing with the hand has different scenarios and cases which we must abide by, because we never want removal of evil to cause more evil. But another thing is here, we've seen also, we never want to normalize wrong. We never should be okay with what's wrong. So we never should say to ourselves, it's only one bad scene, all right, or there's nothing we can do about it. So here we see, subhanAllah, the mindset is that we should never accept what's wrong, and the least of it is in our heart. Now, of course, there's differences about who should be changing the evil. Some say this is for the rulers, and some say this is for the scholars. Some say this is for وَلْتَكُنْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ, let there be amongst you a group of people that fulfill the obligation of removing the evil. Some say it's for the common, person or individual. And all have different roles. And subhanAllah, there was a point in time in history, the weight and the value of the ruler, when it was said, when he said something, it had an impact on people. And same thing with the scholars. So it's very, very important, as we see here, that this is a very important concept, and as known as when it's studied in the books, al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar, commanding what is known, to be good and to forbid what is evil. Now, of course, we said there's a slight difference between munkar and sin, all right? Because the sin depends, not every munkar that happens is necessarily a sin, because sin depends on the age of the person, if that person was ignorant of the situation, or if that person did the thing out of necessity or not. So anyways, I'm going to just go over one or a couple more things, and then we're going to start, inshallah, the second part of the hadith. There are 4 different obligations and should not prevent oneself from doing. Number 1, we should always order ourselves to do good. So when we discuss or talk with our inner selves, we should always tell ourselves to do good. You know, subhanAllah, one NBA player by the name of Hakeem Olajuwon, I don't know if anyone remembers Hakeem Olajuwon, he's playing in the NBA, he always say sports is an extension of oneself. And, you know, whether somebody's selfish or not, whether somebody's, you know, works with the team or not, whether somebody's very aggressive or angry or has, you know, gets angry fast and so forth. So the idea is, imagine if your inner self is always ordering you to be good, to be patient, to be, you know, forgiving and so forth. So we should always have it within ourselves to order ourselves to do good. Number 2, stop yourself from harm. All right? And this is something, you know, subhanAllah, whether it's things we watch, things we consume, the company we have, the environment we go to, the things we listen to, we should always try to stop ourselves from harm. Number 3 is to stop others from harm. And later on we'll see in the hadith, depending on the relationship we have with the individual, all right, you have more or less of a responsibility. So a father or mother have, you know, it's not like they're advising their son or that, hey, I don't think you should watch this pornography right now. No, you stop them, all right? You know, they're 3 or 4 years old, you stop it from happening. You mandate them, right? You command them, all right? Now with friends, it's different, all right? Sometimes they may listen, sometimes they may not listen. You know, subhanAllah, one of the hardest things right now, you know, dealing with certain situations where parents, sisters, or let's say about their son or their brother or uncle is like talk to them, right? And whether it can be any issue, or they're from drugs to not wanting to practice or not wanting to work, whatever it may be. And you realize in those cases, no matter how much they harm themselves, they themselves will say there's no problem, all right? Until a person sees the problem within themselves, there's no matter what you do or say, there's no magic, you know, thing that can happen that can change that person, unless that they want change from within themselves. And of course you continue to make dua. And that's why a lot of those parents think you have it like a Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and everything just changes, right? SubhanAllah, it was that easy. But we should desire to stop harm from others, and that's why they say one of the branches of Iman, if you see something on the road or litter, and you remove it, all right? I remember one of the brothers I know, he was in a taxi cab overseas, and he was drinking water, so he wanted to put the bottle of this on the ground in the car, right? And he asked the taxi cab driver, can I do that? The taxi driver's like, is this guy crazy? He's like, give me the bottle. And he threw it out of the car, right? He's like, what are you doing? He's like, this is normal, all right? And subhanAllah, within our deen, is that this is something that can harm somebody else's car, and it's not something we should accept. So the idea is, all right, removal of harm helps, and it's something very important. And that's why something like simple, like putting shoes on the rack, leaving the bathroom clean after. You know, subhanAllah, imagine, all right, having a reputation, like Masajid having a reputation of the cleanest bathrooms, all right? Imagine what people do. Like, I know people that like, travel half an hour to go home and come back just to use the bathroom. All right, like, no, I can't pick that away. I have to go and come back. You know, in Japan, what are they known for? After World Cup games, to clean, even after they lose. All right? SubhanAllah, it's a beautiful characteristic to have. And Al-Dafatu min al-Iman. Prophet says, cleanliness is from our faith. All right? All right? It is from our faith. It is our Shatr al-Iman, that it is from our faith to be clean, physically and spiritually. So the idea is, imagine having that concept, that people feel that safety, like, you know, when we go to our masjid, the masjid where Muslims are, everything is clean. All right? I remember one time, there was one of the masajid, people left their shoes all over, and one of the elders had to struggle to maneuver around, and he fell on the ground. All right? Somebody may think, what's the big deal? It's my shoe. What's the big deal? Or somebody may think, what's the big deal? I parked here, right? What's the worst that can happen? So as a believer, you're always thinking, I want to stop harm for myself, and I never want to cause harm to others. And number 4, always encourage others, or be in a state of mind to encourage others to do good. So we see here also that we said the main objective of the hadith is to remove evil. So the goal is not to use the hands, but rather to remove evil. And this is a communal obligation. Now, last week when we spoke about this, we talked about some of the conditions of changing with the hand, and it's not meant for everyone. We said, of course, the intention needs to be pure. You have to have knowledge of the Sharia when assessing the levels of evil, and not, as we say, you cannot bring another evil, all right? Whether it be you being in prison, somebody does something to your family, and you retaliate, and this causes you to be away from your family for a very long time, causing even more harm than actually that was caused. Number 3, you have to make certain that the evil is actually there, not gossip and so forth. This is so important. All right. A lot of times we hear rumors and gossip within gatherings. All right, and it's very, very important that we always verify information, and we have to make certain that the evil is there, even when it comes, especially to those who are closest to us, because this can burn or destroy relationships forever. Number 4, may not go beyond what is permissible. So if the father erases the file on the computer, don't go break the computer, all right? Or go overboard. Just remove that, which is evil itself, all right? I know some people that, mashallah, this one father, he broke 4 PS4s, all right? He gets mad, breaks 1, 2. You would think 3 is sunnah, but then he's like, no, we have to do a no bid'ah 4. Alhamdulillah. Anyways, and number 5, removal of evil if you can. If you cannot do it yourself, then ask for help, all right? So if someone's getting robbed or something, but don't be the one who records the evil and puts it online, all right? Makes it go viral. So how so many videos of people going viral, that's by showing, and you see that one brother, if I remember, a couple years ago, when he actually stopped the fight, what happened? People were shocked, all right? Even Oprah brought him on the show, and all right, he did something like people were like, wow, somebody's stopping a fight, all right? So subhanAllah, doing good is always something that you will never regret, and it brings you a sense of sweetness of iman that is priceless, that money can't buy. So may Allah make us amongst those who do remove the evil. Now, of course, if you're not able to change, these are all conditions for changing with the hand. All right. If this is gonna cause you physical harm, or it's not, you don't have the knowledge or spirituality to do so, then it's best to avoid it. But the thing is, subhanallah, we see most of the time, besides the things with the father or the mother in the house with their child in certain situations, the using of the hand is not something as common, especially now without Islamic system in place. I did want to do a separate talk one day about the qualities of those who want to change evil. For example, having husn istima', being a good listener, right, being sincere and so forth. And I'll try to go over some of them if you have time at the end of the halaqa. And the last thing we talked about last time was the 8 scenarios of changing with the hand. And just shows you how in-depth it is, not to be this done without knowledge. And I'm going to skip over that because we talked about it last time, and you can check that video, or you can ask me, inshallah, after about that. Now the second part, we talked about the hadith was changing with the tongue, and that involves telling people, all right, and speaking to people. And this involves also understanding people and those who are around you, to be able to give the nasiha. As Prophet ﷺ mentions in a hadith we spoke about before, ad-deen nasiha, the deen and is being sincere, and a part of that sincerity is giving sincere advice. And it shows that Islam is not an individualistic religion or a way of our deen, but rather it shows that, we have to help each other. So it doesn't just stop at being concerned about myself. You would see the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the toughest ayah on him was the ayah recited in Surah An-Nisa, when he'll be told to be a witness against the ummah. Alright? And that's one of the toughest ayahs being recited because he had so much love for the ummah. Alright? And when we know the love of the Prophet ﷺ he had for us, how can we not show the love for humanity? And have that genuine concern for humanity. Number 2, using your tongue. If you can't do it, ask for help. Call for help. Alright? So if you see somebody on the road, all right, don't think, sometimes if you're extremely busy, you can't help, that's one thing. But we should sometimes be in a situation, at least say, hey, is there anything I can do? You need a AAA card. Can I help in any way possible? be a source of help, right? If you can't do it yourself, call for help. And the guidelines for the tongue, number one, do it indirectly with the tongue or address publicly indirectly. One brother gave a khutbah about something somebody did, and everyone knew that person, who that somebody was. It's like 20 people in the masjid, right? So you don't want to do it like that either. Or send an email, with the header of the person's name, or embarrass that person, all right? So you want to try to do it as indirectly as possible and make it as general as possible. And sometimes it's tough when you know a lot of people. That's why when speakers come from outside, they can say anything and nobody will take offense to it, all right? But sometimes, like husband and wife, friends, brothers, sisters, sometimes everything can be offensive. And that's why it's good to build a culture of advice. They say one of the components of brotherhood and sisterhood is not one that you don't advise each other, but rather you're able to give advice to one another. Because does it hurt our ego when somebody gives you advice? Of course it does. All right? Does it make you feel or be off a certain way? It does. All right? We're humans. But when you get used to it, all right, that that 10% of the nasiha or the advice that person gave may be beneficial, even 1%. All right? So we should have a culture where it's okay to advise one another. Not like where somebody asks you, how do I look? And somebody says, beautiful. And then the person walks to me, I can't stand how she looks or he looks, right? Whatever. Or people, say stuff online. That's to appease other people. So we live in a fake world where everyone just gives fake compliments. That's so they think they can be accepted. In our reality, it causes the disease of hypocrisy. So may Allah protect us from that. Number 2, direct approach with kindness or gentleness when giving advice. SubhanAllah, with all these videos online of people refuting others and people attacking others and so forth, one thing that can never be, subhanAllah, should never be compromised is how you speak to others and give advice to others. And this is not an easy thing to do, all right? Now the scholars, they said, when is one allowed to use harshness when giving nasiha? Now the foundation is being gentle, all right? But sometimes you're allowed to be a bit tough and firm. So you see a coach, all right? He's not, sometimes they're firm, all right? And sometimes that is necessary for success. A leader sometimes needs to be firm. You can't just be gentle in all situations. Some people have to take charge of a situation and be, all right, a firm leader. Now, number 1, when somebody commits a crime against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that requires a had punishment, all right? So for example, there was a time where somebody was caught stealing during the time of Prophet ﷺ. Usama bin Zayd was asked to intercede on her behalf. So Prophet ﷺ said, are you trying to come between me and the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If it was Fatima, which is his daughter, he would have, cut her hand off herself. Now, of course, this only applies under Islam, and had is rules or laws to be punished, right, by the government, which does not apply today. But here we see, all right, a lot of times we lower our guards when it comes to applying the punishment or giving nasiha to those who are close to us. And here the Prophet ﷺ is using his own daughter as an example. That if she was to commit the crime, all right, now we see governments, all right, supporting, corruption and so forth. And corruption leads to more corruption. So we have to be very careful and start with our own selves and be just upon ourselves. Number 2, is when is it okay to be a bit firm? When using the tongue to remove evil, and that is when somebody mocks Islam. So subhanAllah, I don't know if you remember when they made the cartoon about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and I know they showed the video of Pakistan people burning tires. All right, so they're like, what's wrong with these people? Why are they doing this and so forth? But it showed one thing. It showed no matter what you do to our ummah, all right, our ummah will not allow for you to make fun of our Prophet ﷺ. Now they probably didn't react in the most perfect manner, but it shows that hey, they love the Prophet ﷺ so much so that they cannot stand him being mocked. Now somebody would say, what about freedom of speech? All right, and this is where we hold the debate of freedom of speech, and you see the hypocrisy in the freedom of speech. Kyrie, a basketball player, can say something about a movie that, subhanAllah, like the people criticizing about the movie, like Shaq and others, promote it and use it themselves. All right, you say one thing and they want to cancel this person, but they have no problem with the best human to walk the face of the earth, the Prophet ﷺ, for him to be mocked. So we should never take lightly when others make fun of other Muslims. oh, look at this guy, he's always going to the masjid, right? This guy, I remember one time, this is a brother, mashallah, out of all his friends, he didn't have like a girl he was talking to in an un-Islamic way. So he said the only girl he ever will talk to is his mother, right? People were making fun of him, right? And subhanAllah, he was alone at that time, and there was a lot of pressure for him to do the haram. But that mockery itself is not acceptable, especially we already have enough people mocking us. All right, the last thing we need is to mock each other, especially when others are trying to follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, this being said, all right, recently on a Umrah trip, I was talking to somebody I met, and he was like, he asked somebody to make dua. People make dua, and somebody attacked it. The Deen said Islam is a false religion. So he got him and his friends to attack this person, block him, and they went like all out. I'm like, don't do that stuff, right? And they even called his girlfriend, don't go out with this guy, and I was like, all right, he's like, this is not what we should do as Muslims, all right? Like, he went crazy, all right, subhanAllah. So what I'm saying is that, all right, don't curse, don't do what they do, because when the Prophet told the Sahaba, don't curse Allah, he said, how can we do such thing? Is that when you curse the religion of others, that can cause them to curse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to use a lot of wisdom, but we should also be firm that we don't accept it. We're not going to laugh at it, right? We're not going to be the ones, sitting in that gathering where this is taking place. So those things need to be very clear. Number 3, when is it okay to be firm with the tongue? If a person knows better, all right, and you told this person softly time and time again, all right, so you're allowed to be a bit firm with this individual. So if somebody does donuts, all right, in the masjid, and they keep doing it then, so one of the brothers, what he did afterwards, he slashed that person's tire, all right? So anyway, that was his, I'm not saying you don't do that, but don't do donuts in the masjid. But anyways, that's why I have a lot of potholes. Alhamdulillah. Now Ibn Mas'ud said something very profound. He said there will come a time where people will see evil and cannot do anything with their hand or tongue, and the only thing they can do is dislike it or hate it in their heart. Now, somebody was giving this story when we're talking about this hadith. It was Halloween night, and this person was a non-Muslim. They were getting drunk like crazy, and he got to a point where he couldn't drive home, so he asked his boss for a ride. His boss happened to be a Muslim, so in the car, his boss just puts Quran on, and he goes crazy, like his body starts shaking and so forth, until he gets to a place where there's a lot of people hanging out. All right, there's a person who's son of a pastor, in a church, somebody other playing music, and so. But they said, this guy's let's mess around with him. All right, so they'll put different things on and see how this person reacts. So every time they put the Quran, this person reacted a certain way. Subhanallah. Anyways, the next day they wake up, and he asked them what happened. They tell him what happened, and they said, actually, we recorded it. All right, what's the fun of not embarrassing someone and putting it online? Anyways, right? That's why one of the beautiful things in Islam is covering the faults of each other. It's such a beautiful concept that because not only is there a reward in it, Allah covers your faults, especially on the day of judgment. So anyways, this person actually becomes Muslim after this incident. All right, he becomes Muslim. He learns Salah, he learns these things, and subhanAllah, it just shows you that person who picked him up, the Muslim guy, could have said, who are you? This guy's drunk. What good is going to come out of him? But that small ride that he gave him changed him for the rest of his life. And I know one of my friends, subhanAllah, he was with somebody who was drunk. And that person made tawbah in the car. He said, I'll never do this again. And subhanAllah, he never did. So you never know when that window is open for you to be able to give the advice for that individual. All right? And you're saying to yourself, this person, never say to somebody they have no hope. All right? We would not want for anyone to say that to us. Now, this person later had a dream for 5 nights, but we'll save the dream for later if anyone wants to hear about it after the halaqa, what happened in the dream. We'll get to that later, inshallah. Let's continue on. So here we see, if you have the ability to change something with your hand, then do so. If not, with your tongue. And again, for those who came later, or weren't here last halaqa, we talked about the hand in detail. And now we just talked about the tongue briefly. Ibn Mas'ud also emphasizes that, the heart is the last thing. Now, the thing is, a part of our iman, and to keep our iman alive, is to always never be okay with evil. Never allow it to happen, because if you do, we will be tested with major trials, all right? and will be exposed to a lot of evil. So then the question arises: you go to your USF, you see evil around you, like the way people dress and interact and so forth. Same thing on your job and so forth. So then you have to create an environment, right, where we help each other with the lowering of our gaze. You help each other with avoiding such environments, wasting a lot of time. So there has to be that bond, that environment that we create to prevent those things from happening. And the scholars give 5 ways to do so, all right, when it comes to never making the evil normal. Number 1, always put an effort, all right, to dislike in your heart and change it with your tongue. Shaitan will always tell you you can't avoid it and there's no point. 2 things always with no point, there's nothing that you do will change anything, all right? Because if you don't put an effort, the heart will be doomed. The heart will be doomed. Number 2, make conscious decisions as to where you go and where you stay. So like somebody's like in the library for 6 hours, like I don't know what I'm doing here. I just find myself in a hookah lounge, all right, till 1 a.m. Or I'm just hanging out. No, be conscious of your decisions. Where are you going, where you stay? One of the beautiful things about Umrah, you have to be very conscious of every minute if you don't want to miss Salah in the masjid. Like imagine in the haram you can miss Salah if you're not aware and conscious. So you have to be conscious of your sleep, you have to be conscious of where you're at in order to actually make it there on time. So imagine if you're conscious, I can't miss Salah in Jama'ah. I can't miss Fajr. So then, also your gatherings, you're not going to just sit in a gathering. If their gathering does not have the remembrance of Allah, you're going to avoid that gathering. And this involves also virtual because we spend a lot of time online. So number 2, in order to keep the heart alive and not accept evil, make conscious decisions of where you go and where you stay. Number 3, people you actually hang around with. Be very cautious of that. You know, you hang out with somebody who's like, oh, mashallah, check this girl, check this guy out, right? And you just spend time talking about things that don't really mean much. And then look at the story of Uthman ibn Affan, when the Prophet ﷺ was, in the house and his thigh was showing, and Abu Bakr and Uthman came, Umar came, may Allah be pleased with them both. And when Uthman came, the Prophet ﷺ, all right, covered his thigh, and they asked, why is it that he didn't change, do anything when the others came in? He said the angels are shy from Uthman, all right. And I remember, subhanAllah, one time when I was being a principal of the Saturday Sunday school, I remember one of the most beautiful characteristics somebody had was the concept of haya and modesty. So beautiful characteristic to have, all right. So the thing is, the way you speak, the way you talk, so people love being around you. That's why, all right, your modesty. Number 4, making dua that Allah protects you from seeing evil. All right, making dua that Allah protects you from seeing evil. So it requires extra prayers at night, nafil prayers, all right, making extra good deeds, fasting and so forth. And by the way, tomorrow, Friday and Saturday are the middle days of the month. All right, if anyone wants to fast, these 3 days, inshallah. So anyways, making dua that Allah protects you. So here you're asking Allah to help you. And number 5, all right, if you don't do this, you don't want this to happen, that the heart will be pleased with the evil or desire it. So it's like your heart is telling you, how come you're not doing what everyone else is doing? How come you're not watching this? How come you're preventing yourself from doing everything else? How come you're not cheating on this test? All right? How come you're not making a joke about this person? Whatever it may be, all right? So you never want your heart to reach that point. That's one of the best points to ever reach, is when your inner self doesn't want to do the haram. That's like an amazing point to reach. Don't ever think because you get married that's going to stop you doing haram. It's actually going to make you want to do it more, because now you tasted that world. All right. Don't ever think because you're gonna, certain people are going to stop you. You yourself have to make that choice. So if somebody ever says, "Oh, I'm going to get married. I'm going to go to this halaqa, or this shay's going to change my life," no. And that's why they say never get involved or be responsible for somebody else's project. You have to want change yourself. All right. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So seeing people having a really good time, so the heart says, you know what, I wish or desire to stay in this gathering. So then this is a way to test yourself. What do you feel when you're away from the haram, and what do you feel when you see it? And this is something to test your heart with. Now, what is the lowest amount of faith? All right, the lowest amount of faith doesn't mean you hate it in your heart, because sometimes hating it in your heart is more effective than changing something with your hand. All right, because they say like a police officer or somebody who has authority and does something with their hand, all right, doesn't mean they have more iman than somebody who doesn't change it with their hand. Alright, so it doesn't mean that it has to be with the hand. Alright? Now that being said, they said the number one way to know you have, dislike something with your heart is to have ghira. Some people do not like for anyone to look at their daughter or hit on their daughter anyway, or their wife or mother, right? That same ghira, have it for your deen, for the evil. You don't want any evil or accept any evil. You have that jealousy for the deen. I remember last time we were Umrah in 2019, and at that time the New Zealand shooting happened. I don't remember the New Zealand what happened. I don't remember somebody made a comedy after that, like was making fun of the Muslims, and somebody had a debate. He's like, "What's the big deal? It's just humor." It's like, man, subhanAllah, when the ayah says if you save one life, it's as if you save all of humanity. And to kill one person is like kill all of humanity. There's no joking about this. Alright? The blood of a Muslim is not something, or any, for that matter, nobody killing of anyone should never be something to be made fun of. Alright? No matter how long ago it happened, it's not funny. Alright? Have that ghira for the deen. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets accused of having a son, every Thursday, alright, when I go on the call with different pastors over, and they have a prayer, and the moment they say that, it's like subhanAllah, it's like a dagger through your heart. And I say to myself, if I get more offended when I'm made fun of than when Allah is attacked, there's a problem with Allah. Alright? Imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being accused of having a son. Imagine if somebody had accused you of having a child that's not yours. How would that feel? Imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being accused, and Allah is not in need of a son or a daughter, mother or father. He has no free of wants and needs, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does your heart feel that ghira, that desire to not people know who Allah is? Because the earth is about to collapse, the sky is about to split open. If it wasn't by Allah's mercy, when they hear somebody associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So having ghira for the deen is something I rarely see nowadays. Alright? You see like a bunch of students, you can go to, nobody prays, nobody cares. You go to a janazah and somebody dies and it's a funeral and people are outside and half the people are not praying. Alright? Where's the ghira for the deen? Alright? Number 2, love what Allah loves and hate what Allah hates. Alright? So this is a part of, reviving and make sure your heart does not accept evil and not going to the lowest amount of faith. It's to love what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and to hate what Allah loves. And the last thing we'll talk about is some negative results from not removing evil. Alright? It can earn the curse of the prophets. As Allah says, كَانَ لَا يَتَنَاهُونَ عَنْ مُنْكَرٍ فَعَلُوهُ. Alright? They used to not stop wrongdoing that they saw. Alright? So we should make it a habit to make sure we never accept evil. Also, number 2, we'll be exposed to trials, as Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Anfal, ayah number 25. And the last thing, Surah Al-Imran, Allah says, let there be amongst you a group that commands the good, forbids the evil. Alright? And this is something that I believe that removing a lot of evil should be done as a group. We should always seek advice from those who have more experience, who have more wisdom. Alright? We should learn from each other. And one sister asked me, she put her hijab on and she removed all her pictures, from online that were without hijab. She said her friend did the same. She should advise her to remove her picture. I said, wait a minute, right? You have to know what's your level of relationship with that person. Alright, this may have worked for you at this time. Let's take it a step and see how this works for this person. Alright, so a lot of times, the idea is, alright, is that as a group, collectively, alright, we help each other and we work together in doing so. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is the example of the chip. You have 2 levels on the chip. Alright? Those on top bring water to those on the bottom. So those on the bottom said you no longer want to go to the top. So what do they do to the chip? They put a hole. Alright? And now if they don't tell the people on the top, they both will drown. So the idea is, this shows that we can not only be responsible for our own selves, we have to become the mirror of one another. And when we become the mirror of one another, we want each other to succeed at the highest level. Because when you look at yourself in the mirror, you want to look the best possible. Alright? So here's very, very important that we're not only caring about ourselves, because all of us eventually will drown if we don't. And also another hadith of Prophet that those who remain silent when seeing wrong will be afflicted with different trials and tests. And the last hadith is that when some will be asked on the Day of Judgment, what kept you from stopping evil? And this person will respond, Allah is the most forgiving, and I fear the people. Alright? And those people, where will they be on the Day of Judgment to defend you? Now, if you don't remember anything from today's halaqa, remember this statement that one of the scholars mentioned. It's a very beautiful statement. He said, the fear of Allah enables a person and makes a person stronger. The fear of people paralyzes the person. Alright? The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you stronger. Alright? And it enables you to become a better person. But when you fear people, you become like paralyzed. You become stagnant. Alright? So here we see the benefit of fearing Allah and the harm of fearing the people. So never feel the people losing friends. If somebody loses you lose your friendship, they were never truly your friend because you spoke the truth. Alright? So these are things always to think about. Alright? And then subhanAllah, how the fear of Allah enables you, you won't miss Fajr. Because if you're afraid of the people, oh, if I don't come to Fajr, alright, and what are people going to say? So you come here, you become paralyzed. Alright? But if you fear Allah, alright, you're going to be here because you know how much the reward is, how much it's closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it enables you to become a better person. Because now you're no longer a slave to what others think and what others feel about you. Now you're truly a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam Shafi'i says about, advising others, he says the best advice you give to someone is in private unless it's necessary to public, depending on the circumstance. But the thing is, they say one of the most important aspects of brotherhood and sisterhood is to enjoin what is good and forbid what is evil. So if you truly love somebody, you will aid them, alright, in what's right and forbid them from what's wrong. And this is a very, very important quality to have amongst each other, inshallah. Now, one gathering or one session, it could be different, than a Wednesday night. Is, some people, scholars go in depth about qualities possessed by a caller who enjoys good and forbids evil. Talk about, the different qualities that one should have. And that could be for a different time, inshallah. I'll stop here for questions and comments. Anything correct from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any shortcomings from myself, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Anyone want to comment or question? Yeah, so Aisha anha and the Prophet was saying his thigh was showing, so when Abu Bakr came in and Umar came in, he didn't say anything, and then when Uthman came in, he covered it and he